My apologies that I don't prepare for teachings. Let's go with the flow. But hopefully, with that being said, I think it would be good for us to learn things together, so to study things together a little bit. For example, I want to know William Wordsworth. I have a book. I'm not sure who bought it. This is thicker book, okay, a biography. So he's one of the William Wordsworth. I want you guys to do is online do a research. You remember I told you to have this Wikipedia app. If you don't, you can go to your browser to find William Wordsworth. Go to Wikipedia.
How do you spell that last name? Wordsworth. So the word word.
Words.
Wordsworth. All one.
Yeah. Let me share with on the
Is it
on
a
the
name or is that his actual name? Because it's pretty.
is his
pretty
name.
good name for
It
a
is his real name. Yeah.
I think if you have a name like that, you have to write something, right?
Yeah.
Of worth.
Yeah. So what we do is in the past we learn based on one poem. Today we're going to build to read a poet. This study is a poem. It's a little bit different way to learn poetry, am I? So we study a person's life, then sort out his outstanding poetries and read the poetry from there, am I? So everybody has their masterpiece. You see my point, so okay, where is the literature class? It disappeared on me. Okay.
Too many messages.
Yeah, Justin and Ben, in between time, can you guys help me to figure out what the next homework will be? It will be an essay for sure. So, and give a topic, something nature. Yeah. It's 11:11. Now, do you get it? The link there? Okay. I hope you do. Okay. We're going to. Oh man, this is a lot to read, huh? But it's worth it, okay? So I want you to read a solid thing together with you. Let me start. I'm going to have Justin and Ben in turn to read for us, if that is okay. So, William Wordsworth.
Are we at early life?
At the very beginning, I think.
Yeah, in the beginning, yeah. So, you can see English Romantic poetry. 1770 to 1850. Was an English Romantic poet who was Samuel Taylor Coleridge, helped launch the Romantic, what the word there? Romantic age. Okay, it's a pretty good age. You use age to describe poetry, art, even philosophies around this time. Okay, it's outstanding the literature, poetry, and art. I mean painting. Okay, so art basically, they call it art. So they have romantic age, they have all kinds of age, but romantic is very, very outstanding. So William Wordsworth in English poetry tradition was one of the leading figures this age. Okay, so how to launch the romantic age English literature with their joint publication, Lyrical Ballads. How do you say that word? Ballads. Okay, 1798. Now, romantic age is a word productive age for poetry. Okay, so it's from the classic age, shifting modern poetry. Okay, so Wordsworth's magnum opus is generally considered to be the prelude, semi-autobiographical poem of the early years that he revised, expanded a number of times. It was posthumously titled and published by his wife in the year of his death, before which it was generally known as a poetry to Coleridge. Now turn to your book. Go to page 11 in your index called the content section. I'm sorry, not the same. Huh? Is that? I got the wrong one. Sorry. It should be page 9. Sorry. 9. You can find the one, maybe the poem there. I'm not so sure. Is that the same pose or the Coleridge? Where is that?
Did you say page 9?
Yeah, page 9 in the index, in the content.
It says 1x.
You don't have it. Okay, so I read it wrong. I'm so sorry. Okay, we're gonna find that poem to read it. Okay, so
You can find it online too.
yeah, online. We're gonna read it online before we finish the biography. Wordsworth was a poet laureate from 1843 until his death from pleurisy in April 1850. Now, poet laureate is like laureate that the title gives to the poet the court, okay, the royal court indoors, okay. Every court they have their poet, just like they have composers, you know, they have musicians, okay, they have people who are signed to be the head of all poets. Basically, they choose a poet. So it's then they enjoy some privileges, especially pensions, those kind of things. A very highest title, especially in the British Empire or England, kingdoms those days. Making sense to you guys? So it's like today called Pulitzers, am I right? For news publication, whatever, like a Nobel Prize, something of nature. So they have this process. So it was very famous, obviously. So were achieved even during lifetime. Early life. I'm going to read on. Ben, can you read it there? Yeah, okay,
Sure.
So.
Early life, at the beginning there. Mm-hmm. The second of 5 children born to John Wordsworth and Anne Cookson, William Wordsworth was born on 7th of April, 1770, in what is now named Wordsworth House in Cockermouth, Cumberland, now in Cumbria, part of the scenic region in the northwestern England known as the Lake District. William's sister, the poet and diarist Dorothy Wordsworth, to whom he was close all his life, see, they have to write if they have that kind of name, was born the following year, and the two were baptized together. They had 3 other siblings, Richard, the eldest, who became a lawyer, John, born after Dorothy, who went to sea and died in 1805 when the ship of which he was captain, the Earl of Abergavenny, was wrecked off the south coast of England, and Christopher, the youngest, who entered the church and rose to be master of Trinity College, Cambridge. Wordsworth's father was a legal representative of James Lowther, 1st Earl.
Well, just want you to know, Trinity College is the highest educational institution in England, especially in those days. Cambridge is training ministers. Okay, so.
So if you gotta go there, you're like considered like special.
Oh, we're special. Yeah, it's like in the upper. Those days, especially only nobles, rich can go to college, and they're training ministers, which is the highest institution in the land, in a sense. Okay, so today we don't have any institution actually can compare to it. Have you guys heard of some seminaries were good ones? Walton, Dallas Seminary. This is the best. So anyway, so he's a what? He's a master. That means he's one heading all these things. So must be very, very excellent in terms of knowledge. So go ahead.
Wordsworth's father was a legal representative of James Lowther, 1st Earl of Lonsdale, and, through his connections, lived in a large mansion in a small town. He was frequently away from home on business, so the young William and his siblings had little involvement with him and remained distant from him until his death in 1783. However, he did encourage William in his reading, and in particular set him to commit large portions of verse to memory, including works by Milton, Shakespeare, and Spenser. William was also allowed to use his father's library. William also spent time at his mother's parents' house in Penrith, Cumberland, where he was exposed to the Moors, but did not get along with his grandparents or his uncle, who also lived there. His hostile interactions with them distressed him to the point of contemplating suicide. Wordsworth was taught to read by his mother and attended first a tiny school of low quality in Cockermouth, then a school in Penrith for the children of upper-class families, where he was taught by Anne Burkett, who insisted on instilling in her students traditions that included pursuing both scholarly and local activities, especially the festivals around Easter, May Day, and Shrove Tuesday. Wordsworth was taught both the Bible and the Spectator, but little else. It was at the school in Penrith that he met the Hutchinsons, including Mary, who later became his wife. After the death of Wordsworth's mother in 1778, his father sent him to Hawkshead Grammar School in Lancashire and sent Dorothy to live with relatives in Yorkshire. She and William did not meet again for 9 years.
Wow. Can you believe those days? Now, can
Right,
anybody, explain grammar schools to teach you grammar, basically, huh? Is that what it means?
Not just
I'm joking with you guys. Grammar schools are basic education like today's, starting schools, okay? So you would see middle school, that kind of thing. So go ahead, sorry.
Wordsworth made his debut as a writer in 1787 when he published a sonnet in the European magazine. That same year, he began attending St. John's College, Cambridge. He received his bachelor's degree in 1791. He returned to Hawkshead for the first 2 summers of his time at Cambridge, and often spent later holidays on walking tours, visiting places famous for the beauty of their landscape. In 1790, he went on a walking tour of Europe, during which he toured the Alps extensively and visited nearby areas of France, Switzerland, and Italy.
Wow. That place is beautiful. Like I need to watch some videos about it. Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah. No, you saw something about it? You've been there before? Alps, Alps region.
The Alps.
Alps. Yeah, with
You
it.
can imagine that those things influence his poetry in some way or another.
Yeah. Well, let's not get into personal affair too much. Let's see the word curse. Okay. Justin, go ahead.
First publication in Lyrical Ballads. The year 1793 saw the first publication of poems by Wordsworth in the collections An Evening Walk and Descriptive Sketches. In 1795, he received a legacy of £900 from Racely Calvert and became able to pursue a career as a poet.
Those days you receive a pension so you can practice art. Okay, so poetry is considered one of the art. Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
It was also in 1795 that he met Samuel Taylor Coleridge in Somerset. The two poets quickly developed a close friendship. For 2 years, from 1795, William and his sister Dorothy lived at Racedown House in Dorset, a property of the Pinney family, to the west of Hillsden Pen. They walked in the area for about 2 hours every day, and the nearby hills consoled Dorothy as she pined for the fells of her native Lakeland. She wrote, "We have hills which, seen from a distance, almost take the character of mountains, some cultivated nearly to their summits, others in their wild state covered with the firs and broom. These delight me the most, as they remind me of our native wilds." In 1797, the pair moved to Alfoxden House, Somerset, just a few miles away from Coleridge's home in Nether Stowey. Together, Wordsworth and Coleridge, with insights from Dorothy, produced Lyrical Ballads, 1798, an important work in the English Romantic movement. The volume gave neither Wordsworth nor Coleridge's names as author. One of Wordsworth's most famous poems, Tintern Abbey, was published in this collection along with Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. The second edition, published in 1800, had only Wordsworth listed as the author and included a preface to the poems. It was augmented significantly in the next edition, published in 1802. In this preface, what some scholars consider a central work of Romantic literary theory, Wordsworth discusses what he sees as the elements of a new type of verse, one that is based on the ordinary language really used by men, while avoiding the poetic diction of much 18th century verse. Wordsworth also gives his famous definition of poetry as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. It takes its origin from emotion recollected in tranquility, and calls his own poems in the book experimental. The fourth and final edition of Lyrical Ballads was published in 1805.
Let's read the poetry definition by Wordsworth again. The reason this biography followed the dwelling place because his poetry most describe his surroundings, nature, very much. From observation, love in nature. So obviously shared by his sister as well. So go ahead, brother.
Now the definition again?
Yes.
The spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. It takes its origin from emotion, recollected, and tranquility.
Origin from emotion, recollected in tranquility. Emotion is amen. What is this? Fluctuating very much, right? Tranquility what? Is peace down. So how this process getting produced?
He finds time to
Poetry.
think about it.
Through poetry. So it's almost another way said that poetry writing for him is a meditative process as well. Is that amazing? So then he said, then denying this emotion, he said a spontaneous overflow. Pretty overwhelming, right? So of powerful feelings. So, but he learned to tame it, to beautify it, artistically express it through what? Through poetry. That's his way. What about us? We meditate and learn with the Lord. Some artists, some discipline hobbies, you might want to pick it up to do this yourself because it's a good way to learn self-discipline. Okay, so rather than like modern day, let your feelings continue run the show and never produce nothing, so amen, hallelujah. But have you guys heard diamond was formed in the pressure, in the heat, so amen, hallelujah. Pearl, irritation, something irritates you very much, you don't like it, but you cultivate, build a way to accommodate, to have peace with it. And the more you do that, it becomes part of you and beautified by you. I'm not saying that the show life intended to produce pearl for our enjoyment, but it's a high value, take a lot of work. So things of a great value takes a lot of processing. So don't, certain things, the spontaneous expressions are good, but certain things take a solid process. I just want you to see in the art of poetry, there are different ways of being creative about it. But as romantic it is, because romantic always emotion, you can feel the poetry. That's romantic poetry, what it means. Actually, the founder or the start of it said, no, this is the way want to express your beautiful thoughts and even tame your powerful, spontaneous, poetic creativity. So anyway, go on. So
It would seem that he maybe begins his poetry from this spontaneous overflow.
Yeah.
It says that he revised and changed his one poem many times, so he clearly went back. Starts with the emotion and then refines it to make it really good.
Yes, he did not rely on his natural talents, basically.
Right.
It go beyond
worked
that.
hard.
Yeah, go beyond that.
Sorry.
No, I think it's wonderful. Go ahead, brother.
The Borderers. Between 1795 and 1797, Wordsworth wrote his only play, The Borderers, a verse tragedy set during the reign of King Henry III of England, when Englishmen in the North Country came into conflict with Scottish border reviers. He attempted to get the play staged in November 1797, but was rejected by Thomas Harris, the manager of the Covent Garden Theatre, who proclaimed it impossible that the play should succeed in the representation. The rebuff was not received lightly by Wordsworth, and the play was not published until 1842, after a substantial revision.
Wow, look at that. Let's read this one. I can read on this one. I like the poem to read this. Germany and moved to the Lake District. So he came back. I traveled among unknown men. Oh, who want to volunteer to read this after me? We don't have to finish this reading today, okay? We're going to continue as a practice read. So to learn something in a different way, okay? So to appreciate poetry in a different way. I traveled among unknown men. I traveled among unknown men in lands beyond the sea. No England did I know till then what love abode thee. It's past the melancholy dream, nor will I quit thy shore a second time, for still I seem to love thee more and more. Among thy mountains did I feel the joy of my desire, and she I cherished turned her wheel beside an English fire. The morning showed thy nights concealed, the bowers where Lucy played, and then too is the last green field, and Lucy's eye surveyed. Wow, that's beautiful. Anybody want to volunteer to read it? Feel good of reading it?
I'll read.
Yes, read loud.
Where do I start again?
The poetry.
This thing. I traveled among unknown men and lands beyond the sea. Nor England did I know till then what love I bore to thee. Is past that melancholy dream, nor I will quit thy shore a second time, for I seem to love thee more and more. Amongst thy mountains did I feel the joy of my desire, and she I cherished turned her wheel beside an English fire. Thy morning showed, thy nights concealed, the bowers where Lucy played, and thine is too the last green field that Lucy's eyes surveyed.
Is that beautiful or not? I tried amongst unknown men, so went to a strange place, basically. Is that making sense to you? And it's by the seaside. Nor England did I know till then what love about today. So he was back to England. He traveled to Europe, obviously, back home, and the landscape impressed him. You know, he wanted obviously contemplating what to live in the place where he grew up. You know, so Lake District, with a child. You know, to play around, obviously. And can you imagine? I wanted to. You got to learn to read beyond the pages, basically. You know, so obviously his father's away. He was not well accommodated by his mother's family. So a young lad full of sensitivity and poetic passions. Only a dear sister, you know. Obviously they were spiritual people as well, you can imagine. They were baptized together in a sense. I don't know if it's really they involve spiritual things or not, but at least it's a beautiful poetic feelings, you know. So, and for sure, this memory, those formative years, deeply relate to the place where they grew up with. So finally, he got a chance to come back to it. So he was very happy about it, you know. So now we understand to appreciate the people differently. Artists, creative people, they're very sensitive people, you know. So Benji is a sensitive people, so we can't ignore their sensitivity, you know. So learn, especially appreciate the artist or poetry, you know. That's their talents, that what God made them to be. Anyway, so even he started poetry, especially you understand poetry. Take on faculties. What do we call them? Faculties, from sensitivity to poetry faculties. I don't know, I just give my own words there. So, but poetry faculties decide the artistry or the creativity of the works. So you need to read the faculties of poetry, how is it formed? Then maybe learn, study by reading biography like this, to study. Okay, how can I, thinking like a poet, right? So because I'm writing poem anyway, so want to tune up your poetic what faculty, okay? Like anything, take a faculty. Faculty is a discipline. You have to learn discipline. Amen. Hallelujah. Spiritual faculty. Amen. Faculty. That's why it's called faculty in the education institution. Faculties, right? To tune up your sensitivity abilities. So, anyway, this past, that's obviously some of the childhood, melancholy dream, right? So childhood. Nor will I quit it on shore where I grew up. The second time, you understand, come back. For still I sing to love thee more and more, he said. He was expressing his affection, a love for the childhood, growing up place. Among the mountain did I feel the joy of my desire. As she a chariot turned her wheel beside the English fire. Now, interesting that she a chariot turned her wheel beside English fire. What that is? She might follow, almost like Laura or something. Then, either poetically or a real life person, right? So, what English fire means, we need to study more the English political situation in those days, because England was sometimes having huge turmoil and struggles, right? So maybe it was that those days caused a lot of trouble in his life choices. He just wanted to get out of there, so found a place tranquility and peace. Can you believe a poet doing that? So, the morning showed nice and still the bar where Lucy played. Ours is a shade of the tree. Thine too is the last green field that Lucy's eyes surveyed. That's interesting. So that Lucy is the girl she followed almost. I don't know. I would suppose if I read the poem, I will understand that is where her wheel turned, right? Where she went. Anyway, so let's read on called the Lucy poem. Okay, go ahead. Who's reading for us this portion? I'm reading? Okay,
you said you were
okay,
reading.
okay, I'm reading it. Wordsworth Doris.
Can you help me? I don't know where we're at. I just.
Under Germany and the move to the Lake District.
It's below the poem we just read. Yeah. Wordsworth Doris and Coleridge traveled to Germany autumn of 1798. While Coleridge was intellectually stimulated by the journey, its main effect on Wordsworth was to produce homesickness. During the harsh winter of 1798 to 99, Wordsworth lived with Doris in Goslar, and despite extreme stress and loneliness, began to work on the autobiographical piece that was later titled The Prelude. He wrote a number of other famous poems in Goslar, including the Lucy poems, so one of them obviously. In the autumn of 1799, Wordsworth's sister returned to England with the Hutchinson family in Sutburn. When Coleridge arrived back in England, he traveled to the north with their publisher, Joseph Cottle, that's an interesting word, to meet Wordsworth and undertake a proposed tour for the Lake District. This was an immediate cause of the brothers-sisters settling at the Dow Cottage in Greenmere in the Lake District, this time with another poet, Robert Southey, nearby. Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Southey came to be known as the Lake Poets. Throughout that period, many of Wordsworth's poems revolved around themes of death, endurance, separation, and grief, marriage, and children. In 1801, Lowther's heir, William Lowther, first Earl of Lonsdale, paid a £4,000 owed to Wordsworth's father through Lowther's failure to pay his aid. It was this repayment that afforded Wordsworth the financial means to marry. On the 4th October Following his visit with Doris to France to arrange matters with Ante, Woodworth married his childhood friend Mary Hutchinson. Doris continued to live with the couple, grew close to Mary. The following year, Mary gave birth to the first of 5 children, 3 of whom predeceased her and William. Let's forget those later careers. Autobiographical work and poems in 2 volumes. Woodworth had for years been making plans to write a long philosophical poem in 3 parts, which he intended to call The Recluse. In 1798 to 99, he started an autobiographical poem, which he referred to as a poem to Coleridge, and which he planned would serve as appendix to a large work called The Recluse. In 1804, he began expanding this autobiographical work, having decided to make it a prologue rather than an appendix. He completed this work, now generally referred to as the first versions of Prelude, in 1805, and refused to publish such a personal work until he had completed the whole of The Recluse. The death of his brother John, also in 1805, affected him strongly and may have influenced his decisions about these works. There's a little picture. I'm gonna under that house, beautiful home there. Yeah, called the Right Amount. Woodworth's philosophical allegiance, as articulated in the Prelude, in such short works as lines written a few miles about Tintern Abbey, has been a source of critical debate. It was long supposed that Woodworth relied chiefly on Coleridge's philosophical guidance, for philosophical guidance, but more recently scholars suggested that Woodworth's ideas may have been formed years before he and Coleridge became friends in the mid-1790s. In particular, while he was in Revolution in Paris, so that's Revolution Paris, okay? You gotta know the revolution in France, right? So very troublesome time, bloody time actually. So in 1792, the 22 years Woodworth made the acquaintance of the mysterious traveler John Walkingstewart, who was near the end of his 30 years of wandering on foot from Madras, India, through Persia and Arabia, across Africa and Europe, and up through the fledgling United States. Oh, wow. That's crazy, huh? This guy.
30 years.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a modern Marlboro, whatever. By the time of their association, Stewart and published an ambitious work of original materialist philosophy entitled The Apocalypse of Nature, London, 1791, to which many of Woodworth's philosophical sentiments may well be indebted. So he has a philosophical background, right? So now in 1807, Woodworth published poems in 2 volumes, including Ode, Intimations of Immortality, from recollection to early childhood. Up to this point, Woodworth was known only for lyrical ballads, and he hoped that this new collection would cement his reputation. His reception was lukewarm, however. In 1810, Woodworth and Coleridge were entrenched over the latter's opium edition in the Lancers. Oh, opium edition. Those days, opium editions were popular actually. So, sorry. Yeah. In 1812, his son Thomas died at the age of 6 months late after the death of 3-year-old Catherine. Following year, he received appointment a distributor of stamps for Westmoreland. The stipend of £400 a year made him financially secure, albeit on the cost of political independence. In 1813, he and his family, including Dorothy. Oh, wow. So Dorothy moved to Randall Mount. Please, guys, help me with the pronunciations.
There's
okay?
a lot of hard ones in here for
Oh,
everybody.
yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Ableside, between Greenmere and Randall Water. where he spent the rest of his life. Now I'm going to continue. Let me see. Hold on. Oh, go ahead, brother. Your turn. So.
The Prospectus. In 1814, Wordsworth published The Excursion as the second part of the three-part work, The Recluse, even though he never completed the first or the third part. He did, however, write a poetic prospectus to The Recluse, in which he laid out the structure and intention of the whole work. The prospectus contains some of Wordsworth's most famous lines on the relation between the human mind and nature.
Between what? Human mind, nature. That's a little bit philosophical, right? So
this looks like it's the middle of a poem. My voice proclaims how exquisitely the individual mind and the progressive powers, perhaps no less, of the whole species to the external world is fitted, and how exquisitely too. Theme this but little heard of among men. The external world is fitted to the mind, and the creation, by no lower name can it be called, which they with blended might accomplish. I'll try that again. My voice proclaims how exquisitely the individual mind and the progressive powers, perhaps no less of the whole species, to the external world is fitted, and how exquisitely too. Theme this but little heard among men. The external world is fitted to the mind, and the creation, by no lower name can it be called, which they with blended might accomplish. Some modern critics suggest that there was a decline in his work beginning around the mid-1810s, perhaps because most of the concerns that characterize his early poems, loss, death, endurance, separation, and abandonment, had been resolved in his writings and his life. By 1820, he was enjoying considerable success, accompanying a reversal in the contemporary critical opinion of his earlier works. Often happens at the dawn of a new literary age or whatever.
We Chinese have a poem said it is one of the famous poems said, 穷困出世人 means the poem is produced by poverty and hardship. You know, so.
The poet William Blake, who knew of Wordsworth's work, was struck by Wordsworth's boldness in centering his poetry on the human mind. In response to Wordsworth's poetic program that, when we look into our minds, into the mind of man, my haunt and the main region of my song, from The Excursion, William Blake wrote to his friend Henry Crabb Robinson that the passage, quote, caused him a bowel complaint which nearly killed him.
Killing me? Okay.
Writers and poets like to be really spicy with their comments.
Yeah.
Following
the bowel would be considered
the gut.
the seat of your emotions, which is from the Greek. So it would have been, a very like
Absolutely
gut-wrenching.
feel
gut punch,
bad.
basically.
Gut-wrenching, very much strong.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. Yes.
Guys, feel free to
That
comment.
makes
Okay,
more
so
sense than what I was thinking.
yeah.
Following the death of his friend, the painter William Green, in 1823, Wordsworth also mended his relations with Coleridge, because they were estranged from the opium. The two were fully reconciled in 1828 when they toured the Rhineland together. Dorothy suffered from a severe illness in 1829 that rendered her an invalid for the remainder of her life. Coleridge and Charles Lamb both died in 1834, their loss being a difficult blow to Wordsworth. The following year saw the passing of James Hogg. Despite the death of many contemporaries, the popularity of his poetry ensured a steady stream of young friends and admirers to replace those he lost.
I'll read this portion. I want to study this. Religious and philosophical beliefs. Wordsworth's useful political radicalism, unlike Coleridge, never led him to rebel against the religious upbringing. He remarked in 1812 that he was willing to shed his blood for the established church in England, reflected his ecclesiastical sketches of 1822. This religious conservatism also colors Excursion. 1814, a long poem became extremely popular during the 19th century. It features three central characters: the wanderer, the solitary, who was experiencing the hopes and miseries of the French Revolution, and the pastor, who dominates the last third of the poet. Wordsworth's poetic philosophy, Beller, had pointed out the fact that Wordsworth wanted to invoke the basic feeling that a human heart possesses and expresses. In reverse philosophical standpoint that St. Coleridge owns, creating the character in such an environment so that the public feels them belong to the distant place and time. It is true that a philosophical realization by William Wordsworth let him choose the language and structural patterning of the poetry that a common man uses every day. Kurland expresses that the conversational aspect of a language emerges through social necessity. Social necessity posits the theme of possessing the proper knowledge, interest, and biases also among the speakers. William Wordsworth had used conversation in his poetry to let the poet I merge into we. The poem Farewell exposes identical emotion with the poet and his sister Nourish. We leave you here in solitude to dwell. With this our lady's gift of tender thought, thou like the morning in thy saffron coat, bright Govan and marsh marigold, farewell. I have no idea what that means. Govan, what does Govan means?
Sounds like a plant or something.
Like a wild white to yellow flower. Okay.
Flower.
That's why he used a lot of plants, so flowers is another flower. Such kind of a conversational tune persists all through the poetic journey of the poet. That positions as a man in the society who speaks to the purpose of communion with the world common mass of the society. Again, a preface to lyrical ballads is evidence where the poet expresses why he is writing and what he is writing and what purpose it is served to the humanity. Justin, can you continue on there?
Laureateship and other honors. Wordsworth remained a formidable presence in his later years. In 1837, the Scottish poet and playwright Joanna Baillie reflected on her long acquaintance with Wordsworth. He looks like a man that one must not speak to unless one has some sensible thing to say. However, he does occasionally converse cheerfully and well, and when one knows how benevolent and excellent he is, it disposes one to be very much pleased with him. In 1838, Wordsworth received an honorary doctorate in civil law from the University of Durham. In the following year, he was awarded the same honorary degree by the University of Oxford, when John Keble praised him as the poet of humanity, praise greatly appreciated by Wordsworth. It has been argued that Wordsworth was a great influence on Keble's immensely popular book of devotional poetry, The Christian Year, 1827. In 1842, the government awarded him a civil list pension of £300 a year. Following the death of Robert Southey in 1843, Wordsworth became poet laureate. He initially refused the honor, saying that he was too old, but accepted when the Prime Minister, Robert Peel, assured him that "you shall have nothing required of you." Wordsworth thus became the only poet laureate to write no official verses. The sudden death of his daughter Dora in 1847 at age 42 was difficult for the aging poet to take, and in his depression, he completely gave up writing new material.
Well, then he died, basically, so sorry then. But before we wrap up, let's read this poetry a little bit. Which one you think we should read?
A poet laureate, in case you guys are curious, is an officially appointed, into a governmental or some kind of institution, and typically expected to compose poems for events and occasions.
Like a job. So
It's kind of like a job, but it's also an honor.
Honor title.
But that's why he was like, don't worry, you don't have to write any poems for us. We just want to give you the honor.
Yeah.
Like the head poet of the whole country.
The whole country, yeah. This is not. It's national poet, basically.
Yeah.
Who's your national?
I'm not really familiar with that idea.
Yeah. Now, in this list follow his poetry, you will find one in the lyric ballads. She dwell among untrodden ways. That is also in our book, whichever you want to go. And we're going to read that poem before we ramp it up today, okay? So
The one in here.
that's going to be page 144. You can find it. If you have this one, brother. She dwell among the untrodden
okay. Let's see
ways.
if I can find
Yeah.
it too.
I can send it.
Okay, great.
I need it.
She in the list of following this writing, this Wikipedia, you can find the list of his poetry collections, the lyric ballads. The third one says she dwell among the untrodden what?
Untrodden ways.
Untrodden ways. I think
it.
that's very short and sweet. So compared to last poem we read, what? Okay, Robert Frost, what? The we, something that nature. So I think the image were borrowed from this poem that's thinking about it. Okay. So you can see poetry, reading poetry, carried things down the road. Suddenly you're going to inspire you something else. So yeah. She dwell among the untrodden ways. She dwell among the untrodden ways, beside the springs of dove. A maid whom there were none to praise, and were few to love. A violet, but amongst a stone, half hidden from the eye, fair as a star when only one is shining in the sky. She lived unknown, and few could know when Lucy ceased to be. But she in her grave, and all the difference to me. So, wow, that's where Lucy was buried.
Who's Lucy?
Lucy seems to be a friend on
Is it a real person or
Lucy
is it...
Gray. Yeah.
No, Lucy poems. Remember, it's like,
Lucy
we
Gray.
made poems called Lucy.
Yeah, let's read this. It's a good point. Turn to, there's a, down the same list, you can see Lucy Gray and lead to a poet. There's a little writing. This is how you learn things. I don't want you to follow the rabbit trail for everything, but you can understand things better. Right? Yeah, let's read this, then wrap it up. It's just a long writing, but let's at least read a little bit background. Lucy Gray. Lucy Gray is a poem written by William Wordsworth in 1799 and published as a lyrical ballads.
Got it, yeah.
Ballads. It described the death of a young girl named Lucy Gray, who went out one evening into a storm. Lucy Gray gave her name to the lead female character, Lucy Gray Bard, in the novel The Ballads of Sunbirds and the Snakes, Suzanne Collins. Anyway, forget about that. Okay, background. The poet was inspired by Wordsworth being surrounded by snow and his sister's memory of a real incident that happened in Halifax. Wordsworth explains the origins when he wrote Ritten and Goslar in Germany. 1799 was founded on the circumstances told me by my sister of a little girl who, not far from Halifax in Yorkshire, was bewildered in a snowstorm. Her footsteps were traced by her parents to the middle of the lock of a canal, and no other vestige of her backward or forward could be traced. The body, however, was found in the canal. Lucy Gray was first published in Volume 2. Let's read on. Poem. Lucy Gray is generally not included with Wordsworth Lucy's poems, even though it is a poem that mentions a character named Lucy. The poem is excluded from the series because the traditional Lucy poems are uncertain about the age of Lucy and her actual relation with the narrator, and Lucy Gray provides exact detail on both. Furthermore, the poem is different from the Lucy poems in that it relies on narrative storytelling. It is directed imitation of the traditional 18th century ballad form. Well, we can stop there. We're getting not far away from, but you understand it's a real person, maybe buried there and called the Stream Dao. I suspect that might be the Dao cottage where they lived in for a long time. So this place is not far from their dwelling, which is a very beautiful spot, obviously. So, with that being said, I hope I don't overwhelm you guys by reading things on nature, but it give you the background of a well-comes poet, and then appreciate through the appreciation of his life, understand his time, understand his story, to decode, if you will, then appreciate the poetry he wrote, as you will do in the days to come as you write poems more and more. Poems always come with what? Life, right? Life comes with experiences or relationships, and then in the moments of what it called passion, something like that. So I'm not sure now. What's the definition in poetry, brother? You said
Emotional overflow.
emotional
Place of tranquility. Something.
from